Hello and welcome to my attic museum. I've been collecting military objects for about 45 years now and just thought it's high time I actually put it onto YouTube. So my name's Nick Parry and I hope you enjoy my attic museum. Probably not very well done and it's not brilliantly filmed, I do apologise, but anyway, just thought I'd start with the First World War section. It's divided into First and Second World War. So without further ado, straight ahead of you, you have the British Brodie helmet. Okay, these were produced by, believe it or not, a chap called Mr. Brodie in 1915. They weren't actually used probably till about, to be fair, about early 1916. Probably the Battle of the Somme was one of the first battles that they were used. This particular one was used by Captain Francis Buckley, my great uncle, and he was in the Northumberland Fusiliers, hence the NF. He was in the 7th Northumberland Fusiliers, to be precise. So he fought in many battles and he survived the war. Okay, and there's a little picture of him. There he is. Okay, so just coming back to looking at the Brodie helmet, slightly to the right of that is the Stahlhelm. Stahl as in steel, helm as in helmet. And this is the German coal scuttle style helmet that was famous in the iconic in the First and Second World Wars, actually, although they redesigned it slightly. Okay, this particular one was picked up in a trench raid by Captain Buckley on the left there, and also along with some trench playing cards. Even slightly damp, and you can see that they've kind of lost their colour. He picked those up and just put them in his pocket whilst also picking up the Stahlhelm. It was quite popular picking up things as souvenirs for the troops. Okay. Slightly to the left of that is the famous Adrian helmet, and that's the French one. So it's got a slightly blue hue to it. Okay, so all of these were really quite iconic. The Northumberland Fusiliers helmet, the Brodie helmet, also known as the shrapnel helmet, the battle bowler, the Tommy helmet, the tin hat, and also oddly by the Germans known as the salad bowl. Not quite sure where that comes from, but anyway, salad bowl, very similar, to be fair, the helmet design to the English Civil War helmet. So all right, prior to wearing that helmet, the British wore the famous cloth cap, which was utterly useless. Okay, and in fact we'll get on to one of my great uncles, or rather one of my cousins, the son of my great uncle later, who was sadly killed because that's what he was wearing, just the cloth cap. Okay, slightly to the left of that you can see the Pickelhaube. This is actually a reproduction, but the Pickelhaube was used by the Prussian armies and throughout Germany, and actually many countries throughout Europe for about the last 100 years. They were next to useless, but not quite as useless as the cloth cap. They were made up of stretched leather, cowhide or whatever, so didn't really stop a great deal. Okay, you'll find, you see in a number of pictures, they'll have actually covered up the shiny bits, and they'd have had a cloth covering it with the number of the regiments on it. Okay, but we'll get back to that in a minute. So just slowly moving back to the old Brodie helmet and the Stahlhelm. Moving, if you just see slightly to the left of the Brodie helmet, is a gun. This was not a real gun, it was just a gun, or rather something that was just made up to look like a gun. It was used for square bashing and marching and practicing for the troops. Obviously the real guns were having to be used in the battlefield. Okay, slightly to the left of that is a periscope. That might well have been an officer's periscope. Could possibly be bought from somewhere as upmarket as Harrods. Families bought things for their loved ones so that it would make life a little bit easier. This one in particular was a trench periscope, which meant you didn't have to put your head over the parapet to have a look. You could just stick that up there and see what was going on the battlefield. Slightly to the left of that is a trench tool. Okay, and just again putting a human face on it, there is John Norman Marshall. He's my great-grandfather, and that's him in the First World War military garb. He also survived the war. Slightly to the left of that is his pistol holder. So there we go. What else have we got? Just interestingly moving over, just round the helmets and that. There's the famous Christmas 1914 tin that would either have been filled with chocolate or tobacco, depending on whether you smoked or not, or whether you like chocolate or not. This was the idea. It was paid for by public subscription, but it was the idea of Princess Mary, who was the 17-year-old daughter of King George V and Queen Mary. Okay, just remembering that they were very, very German themselves. The royal family, the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas, changed to Windsor so as not to sound quite so German, and the Mountbattens changed to Battenberg because that didn't sound quite so German either. Okay, so just slowly moving back to here. Now, oddly, this is a First World War cap, but was worn by my uncle, and we can just see a little picture of him there in Second World War. At the beginning of the Second World War, he actually ended up fighting with the Chindits, but at the beginning of the First World War, they were wearing at the beginning of the Second World War, sorry, they were wearing First World War helmets and caps and uniforms. There's a colonel in the British Army. That's the First World War and Second World War. You've got the military cross there, OBE, and an array of First and Second World War medals. Moving slightly to the right there is a parade uniform, so he would have just worn that on parade. And then to the right there's my Uncle Robbins again. That's his uniform, the First World War Cup one that would have been used in the Second World War. Okay, slightly to the right of that is another colonel's uniform. Okay, and just bringing the us down here. There's Commander Cranston, Royal Navy, and he was my great-grandfather. Along with my grandfather, you can't probably see him very well, but second to top row, second in on the left. Okay, we can just about see him there. There we go. So just bringing it round, sorry, my filming is not very good. Just to prove that I am actually in my attic, here we go. There's the steps up to my attic. And they're just looking in the eaves. I've got an array of uniforms, RAF, there's an RAF flight lieutenants, there's a colonel in the British Army, a mess uniform, you can see the red one at the back there. To the right there is a brigadier general's uniform in the desert. And another naval uniform, a group captain's uniform, and then you can see the cap and the uniform of captain in the Royal Navy. Okay, so I'm just going to gently come back round here. Some of it's just family, and we've got my grandfather's mortarboard there, and his mason's stuff there. He was a doctor. Was absolutely furious that he wasn't actually able to fight. He had rheumatic fever and they weren't so keen on him going out, so never forgave him for that, did Grandpa. And it's a long way to Tipperary. That's a silk handkerchief, rather large one, that was just used as a lot of souvenirs were made up after the First World War. Okay, so I think we've moved on swiftly to the First World War German. We've got a Pickelhaube on the right there. That was the one that was used, we just discussed that anyway, was used prior to the Stahlhelm, and we've got the Stahlhelm on the left there. Okay, just before we go into that, just to put a human face on it all again. Okay, here's a picture, not very good filming, I do apologise, of Bernard Holles. He's the great-grandfather to my son, my grandson, sorry, Asher. Bernard died, unfortunately, on the 2nd of 11th, 1914, aged 33, in the First Battle of Ypres. Slightly to the right of the picture, you can see him in his waiter's outfit, and that's where he met his English wife and had children in England, but was called back, having served in the German military in 1903, so he's called back as a reservist. He was born in Glussen in Bayern, Germany on 11th of August 1881, and as I said, died sadly 2nd 11th 1914. Not for one moment thinking that he was going to actually be fighting the British. Okay, so moving back to the German First World War table, interestingly we've got Gott mit uns, that's a German First World War belt, God with us. Interestingly, all the nations, foe and friend, thought God was with them, so that's another story altogether. Okay, we've got a German egg bomb there, which is quite interesting. Okay, so that's one that Bernard Holes may well have been familiar with, and also the very iconic Iron Cross. Okay, slightly to the left here is a bayonet, and that was one picked up by Captain Francis Buckley, again along with the helmet and the playing cards that he found in the trench, on the trench raid that I was just talking to you about. Okay, so we're going to slowly move to the First World War British section. This is a picture of George Chapman Bradbury in his plane. He was with the Royal Flying Corps. He was actually a mechanic and then became a photographer. It was in the Royal Flying Corps. He died on 31st 10th 1916 at age 32. They were all so young. He unfortunately, ironically, was not killed in an aeroplane, but was killed in the photographic studio that had been bombed by the Germans. So he didn't survive. So moving back up, I'll just show you a little book that we've written. It's called The Lost Boys, and these were 3 soldiers, all I have a great grandfather in common, and just to show you, that's my great grandfather, so that was their great grandfather too. Okay, so whatever they were the children of my great uncle or great uncle. Okay, that was compiled by myself and my wife. And it basically covers the story through letters, regimental histories and diaries of the 3 soldiers there. And known as the Lost Boys, it was so tragic and they lost so many that the families were quite traumatised and didn't really discuss them a great deal. And of course straight after that was the pandemic, the Spanish flu pandemic, that also possibly killed more than died in the First World War. Anyway, that's another story. Moving on to the 3 boys anyway. First of all, this is Bernard Stubbs, Bernard Castle Stubbs. Bernard he died on the 23rd of the 6th, 1915, in the Second Battle of Ypres. He may well have fought, we think he probably did, in the First Battle of Ypres, which a distant relative of his by marriage would have fought. That was Bernard Holes, the German. So we have both sides here. That's very sad. And he died at the end of the Second Battle of Ypres of a head wound. Again, just wearing probably, may well have been the actual the cap that he's wearing there. Okay. So slightly moving to the left there, that is Cecil Arthur Stubbs. And he's actually signed that picture there personally. Cecil Arthur Stubbs died on the 2nd of the 7th, 1916. That's the 2nd day of the Battle of the Somme. He was fatally wounded on the 1st day. We actually have a letter that his Batman, Private Bastick, sent to the family saying that he was shot almost immediately going over the top. A lot of officers were shot almost immediately. They were identified by either the use of a pistol or whatever, but anything, the German snipers were looking for something that would identify them as an officer. Okay, and then the 3rd lost boy is William Stubbs. He died 25th 10th 1918, literally 2 and a bit weeks prior to the end of the First World War. So that's particularly tragic, particularly poignant. Okay, when they died, they quite often, the families were given what we call a death penny. That was also known as the dead man's penny. It was a memorial plaque, basically, sent to the families to in memory of them. Okay, so what else have we got here? I think we're doing all right now. So that's the First World War. Just behind there is, interestingly, a greatcoat and a helmet. The helmet's of the Second World War, and also the greatcoat is, although it would not have been any different in the First World War. And this particular one was actually used at Arnhem, the Battle of Arnhem, along with the binocular case that I'll show you in a little bit. Okay, so just moving to the last bit of the First World War section, we have some medals here, and that's the Military Cross along with the 1914-15 Star, 1914-18 Medal, the Victory Medal, and the Order of the Nile 4th class. Okay, there's a citation just to the left here, signed by George V, and that would have said what that soldier had done during the battle. Okay, there's a viewfinder, and along with some viewfinder pictures there. That's fascinating. It actually brings into effect a 3D image of the war, the First and the Boer War too. Okay, so slightly to the right of that is a British Army Bible, and you can see there the little Union Jack above. Okay, just slightly there you see a Zeppelin, and here's a Zeppelin whistle. That was purportedly used to warn of enemy attack by the Zeppelins. The Zeppelins were the big airships that came over and bombed Britain. This one, you can see a tiny little bit of it, okay, is a Zeppelin wire from one of the Zeppelins, the first Zeppelin to be shot down in Cuffley, Essex on September 3rd, 1916. So quite interesting that. Okay, so moving back, have we got anything else? I think we've got some medals there, some First World War medals. Just coming up here, just an array of a few bits and pieces. That's a medal that was struck by the Germans for the sinking of the RMS Lusitania. It was a British passenger ship that was torpedoed and sunk by the Germans. There is some suggestion that there were some armaments on board now as the years have gone by, but at the time it was seen as a heinous crime. The Germans actually struck the medal, and then the British struck it just to show how awful the Germans were. Okay, we've got the famous All Quiet on the Western Front, a very poignant German story. Okay, down there some canvas trench maps of the First World War, and interestingly that's some barbed wire from Beyenvold in Flanders, in the German trenches of the First World War. Interestingly, that was found opposite where Bernard Castle Stubbs died. So what else have we got? I think we're pretty much clear there. Sorry about the sun, it's all going to make it very difficult to see, but anyway, hey ho, at least we've got some sun. What have we got? It's got some British medals. I'm not going to go into the medals there, but suffice to say there's some British campaign medals, etc. And slightly up there we've got some cap badges too. Okay, just moving down, there's the cloth cap of an officer of the Second World War. They would not have worn that in battle, okay, but they might have worn it if they were caught out. Okay, just slightly down there is where your medals were. You'd have received your medals at the end of the war in a little package like that. Okay, just moving straight up to there, that is my great aunt. Okay, Maud Pictor, who's interestingly is the daughter of Francis Buckley, Captain Francis Buckley of the famous helmet we just looked at. Okay, so that's my great aunt. And just down here is a letter that was checked by the censors to Lieutenant Commander James Pictor, who was my great uncle. Okay, and just there you can see that kind of wooden contraption with a gauge on it. It's an eyepiece. That was used prior to for the minesweepers, basically, so that they could tell whether they had checked through a certain area before radar. Okay, slightly to the right there is some poppies from the Albert Hall, 1977. And there's a little note, good luck, Nick, from Douglas Bader. Douglas Bader was one of our air aces, Group Captain Bader. He had an accident prior to the beginning of the Second World War and lost both his legs. Was then basically told he couldn't fly, but he wasn't having any of it, and came back and actually became one of our aces. I think down 22 aeroplanes, 22 kills to his name. He was eventually imprisoned at Colditz Castle, which interestingly I went to visit, and I actually stayed there the night. There's Colditz Castle, and that was a British prisoner of war camp. The high up important people were kept there, and he was one of them. And he sent me that. Good luck, Nick, for my collection. Okay. So what have we got here? Just some bits and pieces. That's quite interesting. It's a rice map. That means it can actually be eaten by the recipient or the person that owns it. So if he thought he was going to be caught, and of course it would look very suspicious if he had a map on him, he could eat it. So I thought that's very rare, obviously, because most of them got eaten. On the left there's a cloth map, and that would have been an integral part of a uniform. So that would have actually been kept in the uniform, and then when they were captured, they were able to unstitch it and have a map. Okay. So I think we've got everything there. Okay, there's the famous Australian cap of the Second World War. Okay, just moving up there, that's the Second World War British helmet. Slightly to the left of that is the Soviet helmet of the Second World War. Slightly to the left of that is a paratrooper's helmet, AD Zorro. I don't know if that's actually original. The helmet is, but I'm not sure about the actual writing on it. Slightly to the left of that is the post-1944 British helmet, and slightly to the left of that is the more famous American helmet, very upmarket one that actually has a helmet inside a helmet. So there you go. So just moving back round here. This is now my, just above there, I won't go into great detail, but there's some bayonets and some swords and so on and so forth there, Victorian one, so those are quite interesting. This is my German section. Okay, you've got the German cap there, and the famous German style helm, Second World War helmet there. Okay, just there we can see, I'll try and just focus on that. That's a Nazi ceremonial dagger, not a Royal Navy, a naval Nazi ceremonial dagger. We've got a German bayonet there. That I knew the brother of the chap that picked that up. It was a high-ranking German Nazi officer who wanted to hand it over to a high-ranking British officer. He was a sergeant, so he was a non-commissioned officer, but he wasn't having any of it, and he ended up nabbing it for himself. Okay, good for him. Slightly down there, you can just see the money underneath there. That's Reichsbank note. Okay, a 10,000 Reichsbank note and a 1,000 Reichsbank note. And those were typically, if you remember the pictures in the 30s of the hyperinflation where they had the wheelbarrows, well, that would have been full of some of those. Okay, there's a safe conduct leaflet that was dropped by the planes to give the Germans a chance to surrender. Okay, and there's a little wooden bowl, interestingly whittled by a German prisoner of war in Britain, and I actually met him. Very interesting chap. Okay, just down there, I haven't got a great deal. Oh dear me, sorry, not good filming, not good filming. Okay, just here we've got the bomb release mechanism from a Messerschmitt 110, and the landing light, or the wing landing lights on the right there. In it, it's scratched Heinkel 111, 27th September 1940 during the Battle of Britain. But it now looks like, I have looked up the records, it looks like it was actually a Messerschmitt 110. The pilot was killed, the co-pilot was taken prisoner actually by the vicar of the village, who took him down to the police station. Okay, so interestingly, and I don't know where it is, it's here somewhere, I have fragments from Hurricane, and the Hurricane was the actual plane that shot this one down, and as it was shooting it down, this one shot the Hurricane down, so they both ended up, as I said, the pilot died in this one, the Hurricane pilot survived. Okay, so let's just move back up here now. This is a rather odd, I'm not going to go into much detail about him. That's Hermann Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. He's a, let me get around, yeah, Hermann Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. He's the prototype of a street act that I do, which you can hear all about that some other time. Okay, I will just bring you over to the street act. He's the one I have used, and this is Private Poundbury. If you go on YouTube, Private Poundbury, you'll be able to see me in action, but you won't be able to see me, if you see what I mean. You'll understand when you see it. So that's Private Poundbury and Hermann Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. Just looking at the Second World War British Christmas card. Okay, and that was actually from the 87th Infantry Division, who were taking the mickey out of Adolf Hitler in the card. Slightly down there is the Deutsche Wehrmacht, German army that is, armband, which would have been used when they were running out of uniforms. Okay, so the merit medals there and a cap badge. And slightly down there, you've got the Mother's Cross there, interestingly. There's the Mother's Cross. Okay, this was issued in 1938, and you had to have 8 children or more to receive that. I think you deserve more than a blooming medal, but anyway, there you go. Slightly to the right of that is a Nazi swastika and eagle. Okay, so what have we got up here? Well, we've got the famous chap there, Let Us Go Forward Together. And there's Fred. Fred has been with me in the collection for quite a long time. Let me just move backwards so you can see the whole of him. He's got a gas mask on and a British helmet. He's a corporal in the British Army, and he's got some bits and pieces. Okay, there's his boots. Slightly down there, I know it looks a bit odd. I hope you can get an idea of the gist of it. That's a field bath. The bath is at the bottom there, and that would have opened up, and then a field basin, and that would have been for the officers so that they could have a jolly old bath in the field. Okay, so what have we got here? Now we're coming into the home front section. It's all a little bit jumbled. I haven't got the hugest of attics. Okay, just down there you can see a little box there. That would have had a Second World War civilian gas mask, and just on top of that is my great-grandmother's hat pins for some reason. Okay, and there's some medals of the Women's Voluntary Service, and then we've just got a few things here. Slightly to the right you can just see the funnel of an old record player, and to the back there you can see an old 40s radio. Just above that is my grandfather's, Grandfather Heathcote's top hats, and slightly down there is my mother's school hat. Okay, just slightly down there, just to put a human face on it, is Ernest Hare, and he's my wife's grandfather. Lived to 101, and that's him in his Second World War garb. Okay, just moving back to there, you can see a baby's gas mask. The baby would literally have got in the whole thing there. Okay, kind of scary really. Okay, and slightly to the left there you've got a warden's helmet. Okay, an array of pictures. There's my great-grandfather, and there's my great-grandmother with her hat pins, and those are actually her glasses, can you believe? Okay, there's my great-great-grandfather. Sorry, I don't want to bore you silly with all this. Here's a post office savings book, clothing book, and national identity cards with a double-decker bus for some reason. Okay, so just moving over here, keeping it in the family. You can see that rather messy bit here. I'm just showing you that. That's a blind from Millbrook House where my mother was during the war, and that was one of the blinds. And slightly to the left of that is a stirrup pump, and that would have helped them put out any fires had there been a fire. Okay, slightly below that, can you just see the orange? That's a silk map there, okay, of Burma, and that again would have been sewn into a uniform. Okay, nothing to do with the wall at all, but I just thought that was quite interesting. It's a convict prisoner's badge of the medal button of the 19th century Victorian era. So I don't know where I got that from, but okay, just moving back again, we've got an array of gas masks, and we've got an RAF female cap there, the RAF Berry there, and then we've got Navy. Okay, and Royal Army Medical there. Okay, just moving down here, we've got that's the binocular case I told you about, the chap who wore it at Arnhem, fought at Arnhem. Okay, we've got a dinghy knife there. Okay, just moving down to here. This is a little bit of Victorian stuff I've got, and that's a sergeant's chevrons, of the pre 1900. You can see the red around the edge, which would have been the red uniform. Okay, just slightly to the left, there's some documents that I've got, and that's Victoria's signature. Can you imagine her hand was actually on that piece of paper? I find that amazing. I've also got George V there, and I've got Edward VII too, and a number of other interesting medal signatures. Okay, this is really going to be hard to see now, so I'm just going to... There we go. Right, that's better. Okay, the chap in the middle there, this is Flight Sergeant Brazier, who is my wife's grandfather. And he was a Lancaster bomber pilot and went on a lot of missions over Germany. He survived the war, and he is, well, I say he's top second left, but anyway, that's him. We've just got a good picture of him there. That's brilliant. Okay, so what have we got? We're pretty much coming to the end of it now. Just so what I'm going to do is just show you a little bit of the museum and then finish. Okay, thank you for watching. Okay, so just finally, last couple of things. This is very interesting. It's a letter sent to Camp Sebastopol, written in Camp Sebastopol on the 25th of April 1855. It says, "Dear wife, I write these few lines to you hoping that you and Bessie is quite well." It goes on about some money, worrying that he hadn't received the money, or she hadn't received the money. He also writes, "Dear Margaret, we have opened fire again from our batteries on the 9th of April and we still continue to fire, but not so much as we did at first. We still keep making fresh batteries. We are so close to the Russians in one place by night that we hear them." Okay, so that's a particularly valuable part of my collection, and that's a letter from Camp Sebastopol. Okay, without further ado, I'm not going to drag this on and on and on. Obviously, just at the back there, I've got to show you my action men. Everyone's got to have an action man, and I've got 10. So there's my action men. But anyway, suffice to say, thank you for listening to me going on and on and on about my army collection. As in the great words of the great man, let us go forward together. This is April 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I have an awful lot of time on my hands. So wishing everyone luck and cheerio.